Well, alrighty then. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Slow Art Friday. My name is Christy McMillan. I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement here at the Asheville Art Museum, and I'm joined by my colleague Susan Oliver, touring docent, who will be leading today's conversation. Each Friday at 12 p.m., docents lead virtual interactive conversations about a few artworks in our collection or special exhibitions. The goal is simple: slow down, discover the joys of looking at art, and talk about the experience with others. For today's program, Susan will lead us in an interactive conversation about three artworks in our special exhibition, A Telling Instinct. We'll spend about 15 minutes or so with each artwork. Susan will allow us time to look at each work on our own, slowly, before leading a conversation about each one with questions. As participants, we encourage you to engage in dialogue with Susan, myself, and each other throughout the hour. Just a few notes before we get started. You probably noticed that your microphones and video were muted by default. If at any time you'd like to turn on your video, we'd love to see your smiling face on this Friday afternoon, and I'll make it in a moment so that you can also unmute your microphone. If you do choose to turn on your video, try not to sit in front of a window, lamp, or other strong light source, as it makes it hard for us to see you. Choose a quiet room and close the door. Silence any alerts from nearby devices, as they can be distracting during the conversation. Use headphones and a microphone for best sound quality. While you can log in using a smartphone, we do recommend using a desktop, laptop, or tablet to see slides and meeting tools on a larger screen. Make sure that your screen name includes your first name and last initial, or first name and last name, so that we know who you're talking to. In order to ask questions or make comments throughout the program, you'll be able to unmute your microphone when Susan asks for questions or comments. You can also put any questions or comments into the chat box. A third way to participate is to raise your hand in the participant sidebar, and I will call on you and unmute your microphone. I can say that sometimes it takes a while to get to raise hands, so please do feel free to unmute yourself when the time comes. We are recording, so if you prefer not to be recorded, make sure that your video and audio remain muted and use the chat box to submit any questions or comments. Before we get started, does anybody have any questions? Okay, I did want to note that today is the first in a two-part series of Slow Art Fridays that are focusing on our special exhibition, A Telling Instinct, John James Audubon and Contemporary Art. And Susan is going to kick off that two-part series with today's topic, Talking Animals. So Susan, what are we going to be talking about today?
Oops, was I muted? Sorry. We're going to talk about the way artists use animals in their artwork to communicate something to the people who are going to observe their artwork. I have always known that animals communicate with us. I've always had animals as pets, and I know they can certainly communicate with us. And any artist is trying to communicate through their artwork. But I thought it was particularly interesting how in the Telling Instinct exhibit, how I noticed that artists are deliberately using animals to communicate with us on various topics. So I wanted to explore how three different artists in that exhibit did this with various animals. So we can take a look at the first one. And what I'd like you to do, this is a photograph, and I'd like you to spend about a minute looking at the photograph, look through all the details of the whole thing, and then we'll start talking about it. Okay, so what's going on in this artwork? What's going on in this photograph, and what do you see here? What do you think it's trying to say? Anybody?
I see I see an animal who's maybe hiding from shame or fear or embarrassment, I think.
Okay, what do you see that makes you say that?
Well, the bowing of the head and the hand over the face.
Okay, good. So his position of his body looks like he's embarrassed or ashamed of something. Anybody see anything else or anything in addition?
I'm reminded of the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil kind of, that. And I'm also struck though by the lighting and the color, the way that the fur looks very soft. And one last thing, that hand to me looks almost human. When you look at the fingernails, it almost looks like a human hand to me.
Right. Well, we are primates and they are as well. And the lighting is very interesting in the way it hits the fur, especially against the background. Anybody see anything else in this that we could talk about? Anything else?
Sally said,
Sally,
oh, you got
sorry.
it. Go ahead,
No.
Susan.
Sally said, it makes me think of a child hiding. If I don't see you, you can't see me. That's great. I can see why you're saying that. Have you seen children hiding with their hands over their face? So anybody have anything else that they can see in this photograph? We know it looks like if it was a person, it's probably embarrassed or shy or hiding for some reason. And yeah, Lorraine says the monkey's hand looks human, and that's true. And it's one way I think that the artist chose to help it make it easier for us to associate with this animal. So maybe we can turn to the information page and find out a little bit more about this. So we do have, there's a series of, there's two, the other one of two of his animals in this exhibit. So the other one, I believe, is Slow Loris. This one that we've been looking at is a weeper capuchin. And it's actually, you might think that it's called a weeper because of the way he's posed, but actually he's called a weeper capuchin because of the mournful cry that he makes when he's communicating, who knows, with other capuchins or maybe with us. But so that's why it's got that name. It's a photograph by Joel Sartori, and who lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. And he took this photograph at a zoo in Panama, the Summit Municipal Park. And the reason that he took it is it's part of a project he's been working on for some time. In 2005, Joel Sartori is a photographer for National Geographic. And in 2005, he took off from work for a number of years. He took a break from his work as a National Geographic photographer to take care of his wife, who was ill, and she's fine now. But while he was home, he thought a lot about life and death, and that started him thinking about all of the animal species that are going extinct on our Earth. And he decided to start a project called the Photo Arc, in which his intention is to hopefully hope people realize what biodiversity looks like and get everyone to care about all of these different species while there's still time to perhaps save some. He estimates that by the end of this century, half of the animal species that humans interact with in any way will be gone. So the Photo Arc is a way to save all those creatures so that people can see how that there is, this is a quote from Joel, see that there's beauty, grace, and intelligence in the other creatures we share the planet with. In order to do that, he decided to just make simple, clear portraits that showed nothing but the animal, and the backgrounds are all either white or black, so that the animal itself is really highlighted, and he can also use his professional lighting skills to show all the details of the animals. To this point, he has completed more than 10,000 photographs of 10,000, well, more than that, but of 10,000 species. And it's been 15 years since he started the project. He expects it to take another 10 before he has been able to photograph every animal that he says is in human care in the world, which means any kind of interaction we have with them. So this is a weeper capuchin, but he's also done other capuchins. It's, by the way, it's also called a wedge-capped capuchin. You can sort of see the wedge on the top of the head. And it may have taken him a long time to get to wait for this photograph, which is so perfect and shows the hand, which connects us even more with them. So that the photo arc is a project that he's still in with National Geographic. And I just wanted to mention that if you go to Joel Sartori's website, which is joelsartori.com, you can see all of the photographs from the photo arc. And you can also buy prints of them or books with collections of them, and 100%, he gives 100% of the profit from any sales to this project. So I think it's really interesting to see what he's trying to accomplish by connecting us with these animals, and hopefully we will be able to save some of those species that are about to go extinct. Does anybody have any more questions about this photograph or Joel Sartori or the photo arc?
I just had another comment about this photo. Now that I'm spending more time looking at it, I'm thinking it's almost like he or she is being kind of coy and maybe giggling behind that hand, having kind of fun with it.
Maybe camera shy or trying to frustrate the photographer. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I noted that it said promised gift. Does that mean the museum does not yet own it?
Christy, I would think
that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And like I said, this is a print. The original photograph, as you can see, is from 2015, and this is a print from 2019. And while originals can be very expensive, prints could be affordable. And like I said, so far there's 10,000 different animals, but the books are great too, because they show a lot of the prints, and some of them are sort of subject oriented, different kinds of animals that have something in common. Any other questions before we move on to our next work of art? Okay, so let's go to a painting. So some of you, well, anybody who's been to the museum has seen all three of the works, but take some time to really look closely at this photograph, at the painting, and see what you can see. I'll give you about a minute to take a look at it. Okay, so what's going on in this artwork? Anybody?
I feel like I'm being yelled at by this animal.
What makes you say that? What do you see
No,
that makes you say that?
he or she just looks angry and has teeth bared, and I don't know. I feel, looking directly at me.
Mm-hmm. So how does that make you feel when you look at him?
Not frightened, maybe ashamed. Like, what did I do? I'm wondering if
Okay.
it's some kind of environmental statement.
I find it a little unsettling. The red eyes, and then it looks like some markings above the legs on the torso or the stomach, like a red stitch. Yeah, they're like maybe the animal's been in a fight and it's got big, claws. And it's interesting, the shadowing and the way the whole body's facing one way, but the head is looking directly at us.
Sure. So do you think that brings you more into the artwork? That connects you more to it?
I do.
Okay. Some other comments from the chat box. Christy, can you see if anybody else has made it?
Yeah, Lorraine said the bear looks like it's stranded on a cracking or diminishing ice flow.
Right. So, and you say that, why do you think that it's a diminishing ice flow? Why do you think it's something different than just a regular iceberg where you might see them? I see.
It's smaller.
Yeah, it's smaller. Yeah. Sally says that the ice cap is so small it has nowhere to go. What else do you see in this? So this seems to some of you like a statement that he's making with the small iceberg. Anybody see anything else in here that you would like to bring out?
Lynn noticed, again, I think it was you, Alice, that noticed the red eyes. And Lynn says that she's drawn to the red eyes and was wondering why they're red.
Okay.
Which I don't know if we know an answer to that, but certainly they stand out.
Maybe it's albino.
Well, also, I mean, I'm just, sometimes when you look at your own animals, if it's kind of dark out, their eyes look red. Animals' eyes change in order to see in the dark. However, it's not that dark here, so I'm not sure why. Maybe it is to connect, as Sally said, connect the red eyes to the red wounds on the bear. Anything else anybody sees that they would like to mention that's going on here?
I'm with Lorraine here, that I too think that it's sort of stranded, and I think about those sort of films where we're watching the ice caps melt and you see animals like the polar bears getting stranded on pieces that have broken away, and they kind of start to starve because they can't get back to land, or they don't have access to their food sources. And maybe, Alice, that's why he's angry. He can't, get back to land, to his home and his food source.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that artists can use animals to talk to us. And what do you think that the artist is trying to say to us in this painting?
Maybe he's having the animals say, stop with the global warming, stop all your practices that are causing this issue for us. Yeah, kind of making it personal.
Yeah, so it seems like he's making a statement about global warming and what it's doing to animals. Like Christy said, we've all seen those videos of the icebergs melting. Anything else you think he might be saying here? Anything else that you see?
That he's a big animal, and although he's big and strong, he's very vulnerable.
Right. What makes you say that? What do you see that makes you say he's vulnerable?
Well, because I guess because of the wounds that he has there, and again, the red eyes, and because he's so isolated and out there alone.
Yeah, I can see that. Anybody else see anything else that they want to bring up? See
There's
anything else
something,
in the painting?
there's something about the way the background's painted and the way he's posed that makes me think of like a history museum where they show prehistoric people and they're posed the way they used to live, and then they have this background that's painted. There's something about the picture that makes me think of that.
Like a
That's-
diorama, Sally?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I've actually seen dioramas in natural history museums of polar bears. One of the things about a painting is that as opposed to a diorama, you can do whatever you want with it to have an effect, I suppose. Why do you think that he made the background, the sky, look so gray as well as blue?
Well, the sky doesn't seem to go with the sky seems more like a different place, more like a warmer place, more like a tropical place with the different colors. The sky doesn't seem cold, really.
Okay, that's
But then
yeah,
you've got ice
right.
and the very blue water, but not the icy blue, just a dark blue.
Yeah, and that too is kind of sending a message. I haven't been to the North Pole or I haven't seen polar bears, but when I've seen pictures, there's a lot more ice around. So that blue water is kind of maybe pretty to us, but looks a little ominous when you consider what's going on. So what's the point that you think that this artist is trying to get across to us? About does seem to be about global warming. Anything else that anybody can see?
I guess for me, you guys have all pointed out sort of the wound right here on his belly that really stands out against, the color of his fur. And I was also looking up here and around sort of his left side. I don't know. I have to go upstairs and look at the painting, but that also seems a little maybe unnaturally ruffled or maybe bloody. I don't know. I'd have to go see if there's any red there, but who is a predator against an animal this big? It is the top of its food chain. So, who is, able to wound an animal like this? Is it a wolf? I don't know if wolves are that bold, or, was it forced out by a human? I don't know. But it's, like Alice said right at first, very implicating humans in the you know in the fate of this animal, which does not appear to be a good fate. What's going to happen next?
Right, and perhaps he's staring at the species who has put him in this situation as they're looking at it.
Right, going back to what Lynn said about the red eyes too.
Yeah, yeah. And
anger.
So I have to say that having lived in Florida for a long time, those stripes or bars on top of his back remind me so much of what manatees' backs look like, which is from propellers on boats. I don't know that that would be true of him, but perhaps he has been shot. That's what that red, perhaps bullet hole would be. Let's go to the information on this one and see what it is. For one thing, as you can see from here, it's a very large work. Polar bears are really large, and this one not only takes up a lot of space on the museum wall, but a lot of space in the painting. So this is done by Bo Bartlett. He's an American realist who, and you can see how it's very large, 82 by 100 inches. So Bo Bartlett went to art school at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And artists who study there are have to master realism before they can move on to any more modernist or contemporary paintings. And Bo Bartlett's work seems to be really set in American realism, and yet with a contemporary feel because of how he can manipulate it. Much of his work involves humans, and they are all the people around him that he knows or in his neighborhood. He lives, actually, apparently he has 3 homes now. He has a home in Pennsylvania where he went to school and one in Maine, but his main home is in Washington State where he has his studio. And if you go to his website, again, bobartlett.com, you'll see that most of his paintings are of real scenes of realistic people with a little contemporary layer to it, where he's showing everyday life, but puts some imagery in there to give it a mythical or allegorical context. And that certainly seems to be what he's doing with this animal. Even though most of his paintings do seem to be about people, Bo Bartlett is also an activist, and he's very active in peace and human rights groups. He's also active in gun control and, of course, in environmental groups. So you can see all that coming. He's communicating all of those issues through this painting.
Could I say 2 more things?
Sure.
It's possible that another polar bear could have been in a fight with this polar bear because limited resources for food sources and things could have been struggling with another polar bear. And the other is the opposite of the other photo we saw. This bear can speak, can see, can hear. So
those are great points. So in looking at his wounds, you can see how that could have been made by another polar bear. That's a real possibility. I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right. There is no other predator for the polar bear than humans or another polar bear. So that's true. And perhaps they were fighting because there's no room on the iceberg anymore for more than one bear.
That's a really good point. I don't know polar bears enough to be able to tell you this, but I keep going back to the polar bear's face and the fact that this sort of darker fur above his eyes makes him look kind of human. It kind of looks like eyebrows, and also the way that the fur is sort of folded and shadowed over here on its left side just gives it more, like it makes it reminiscent of a human face, I think, and maybe helps us to try and empathize with him a little bit more.
That's a great comment. It's something that we saw in the first photograph, how it could make it very human. And with a monkey, you could see how it looks human. With a polar bear, they normally not at all. But you're right. He has made the face look like we could picture a human looking in this situation. That's great. Anything else anybody notice or want to bring up? Okay, so let's look at the next picture. Okay, so take a minute to look at this this work of art and what you can find in there. So what's going on in this artwork? What do you see here happening here?
It's
Well,
kind of
oh,
unsettling.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Alice.
I was just going to say one thing is it's hard to tell if it's it's a photograph, right? But it almost looks three-dimensional to me, which it makes it really interesting. But I think it's a animal. I don't know what it is, what kind of animal, but it's an animal that just looks joyful and happy and healthy.
What makes you say that? What do you see?
Well, the sparkling eye and the open mouth and just maybe that tuft of hair on top just looks jaunty. It's just
Kind of looks like a little mohawk, right?
Yeah. The fur just looks nice and glossy and everything. He or she looks very happy and healthy.
Why do you think that it looks 3D?
I don't know. I mean, that's just how it appears to me.
Okay.
Like it's sticking out, like the jaw and the nose look like they're coming out.
Yeah. It might be the angle of this. It is a photograph. Anybody see anything else in here that
There's a
you think is
faint,
going on?
there's a faint shadow to the left under the ear and along the side, and also up at the top on the left, right above the ear, there's a little bit of a shadow with that lower part of the hair. Yeah, under the mohawk.
Yeah. Yes. So why do you think that shadow would be there? What do you think he intended with that?
Well, it's looking into the light, so it casts a shadow.
And that also could be a way he's making it look three-dimensional. What do you think is the reason why he wanted it to look three-dimensional?
I took it differently. I took it to be an animal in distress. I mean, I'm looking at the eye. I was drawn to that with the lighting, almost as if it would be tearing and as if the animal was yelling out in distress. That's the impression it gave me.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because a lot of the same things that Alice thought made it look happy make you think it looks in distress, which is very interesting. Anybody see anything?
Maybe it just shows that there's a lot of emotion going on there. The artist has been able to really portray a lot of emotion, whether it's positive or negative.
That's right. Yes.
So Susan,
do you think of an animal as having those kind of emotions? Is that that's something that seems like what you would see if you were looking at an animal like this?
I think animals have those kind of emotions, but I don't know that they necessarily exhibit them the same way we do. I'm reading sort of human emotions into it, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So once again, a connection with the people who are looking at it. Anybody see anything else they would like to mention?
I would. So when I was a kid, we used to go to my great uncle and aunt's house every year. And my great uncle was a big hunter. And he had on his, in his trophy room, the head of a wild boar that he had shot and had stuffed. And it looked nothing like this. I mean, I'm with you, Alice. I think that this wild pig of whatever kind it is looks very joyful and happy. And I remember as a kid, out of all of the game that he had in that game room, it was the wild boar that scared me the most. It was much smaller than everything else, but it scared me the most. And I think it was because I knew that walking through the woods, it was something that I could come across. It also had like much scarier looking incisors than this guy. But it struck me as we were talking about this that it kind of looks like a trophy, a stuffed head that you would hang on the wall, but the context is completely different because of the way that the animal looks so alive and, to me, very joyful, but also that this frame is kind of like a happy little frame, you know? And so it almost turns that whole idea of, you know, the sort of very masculine hunting, killing things trope on its head, if that makes sense. To me,
It
as a
does.
as a woman who doesn't pick up guns and kill things.
Yeah, so it looks like a piece of taxidermy you might see on the wall. And maybe that's why he has the angle and the shadow to make it even look more like that, like three-dimensional.
It looks
That's
so three-dimensional. I completely agree with that. And then once you said that, I just couldn't unsee it. But I think it also has to do with the absolute minute detail of every single hair and whisker and fold in the tongue. It's just it's so beautiful and sumptuous. But again, not like no piece of taxidermy you've ever seen.
that's great. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else see something going on in here?
The frame is different and interesting, with the pattern on it, and you know, I don't know what to call it, though it's so decorative compared to a wild animal. Also, it being dark and an oval like that, it's really captured, not necessarily, it's captured kind of in time and space in that one place.
What does the frame make you think of? Have you seen other frames that are oval and decorative like that?
It makes me think of, what's his name, Gorky or whatever, who does all the black and white kind of drawings, sort of Addams Family-ish, of
Edward Gorey.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
That frame makes me think of that time.
It's kind of gothic looking,
yeah,
yeah.
Has
well,
anybody mentioned that it doesn't, since you've seen, Christy, my father also had mounted trophies on the walls of his room. And the pig was scary, but the pig had real big teeth. This one doesn't.
Yeah,
I wonder about the proportion of the ears and the nose. I don't know this animal, or if it's a combination of animals depicted, but to me, they almost look disproportionate to the size of the head.
Yeah,
you're right, Laurel. I think usually the pigs that we see, their eyes are much smaller than this. And I don't know if the artist has manipulated the proportions to make the eyes bigger, because of course things with big eyes we tend to have more sympathy for. I don't know.
Well, anybody have anything else they want to mention before we look at who made this work of art? So could we go to the next slide, Christy? So you can see that he's done a series of these trophies, look like trophy heads. And all of them are very much the same size,
they all
the same
look
background.
Yeah, they all look three-dimensional.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's interesting. They all have that tilted head that gives it a little of that. Actually, the tilted head is what I think lets it have the shadows, especially in the rabbit. So we can go to the next slide and see that this is a photograph. And it's so detailed, you could almost think it was a drawing, but it is a photograph. And if you look at the labels for the three that he has there, they just identify the species. Evan Kafka lives in Asheville now. He spent most of his work life in New York City, and more recently moved his family down here, having kind of had enough of things that went on in the city and wanted to come to a more peaceful place to raise their family. And when I actually was able to talk to him, and I was wondering why this was the only one of the portraits that he made that had a name, Juliana. And he said, well, actually, it's a mix. This animal is actually a mix of a Juliana guinea hog and an African guinea hog. So it's exactly what it says there. So maybe that's why the proportions seem different, or the teeth, because it's a mix. It's a mutt guinea hog. So Evan Kafka does call this series of photographs trophies, but it wasn't what he started out to do. He just wanted to take pictures of animals and was thinking about the fact that the face is what's the most interesting part of any creature. And so he decided to do headshots of animals. And he's a very skilled photographer who originally worked at, like a computer technician who was working at a newspaper, and he was working with photographers there, and his technical skills brought a lot to the photography they were doing and made him realize he wanted to be a photographer. So he started photographing, editorial pieces, like photographs to go along with a magazine article or the cover of a magazine. And he felt that that was not giving him what he needed. So he decided to move on to commercial work, which I'll show you in a minute. But he used his skills as a technologist and photographer to use lighting to create the very detailed look on these animals' faces. And in using the lighting, he decided to try just draping them with fabric so he could really focus on just the head. And at that point, when he started taking photographs like that, he realized it looks like taxidermy. Evan says that, a lot of people approach it across the room from where it's hanging, thinking it's taxidermy or a picture of taxidermy. But the thing he loves most about it is to be able to say, these animals are alive and well, and I know them. So he also felt that when he did use the lighting to capture all those details and to capture the expressions on the animal's face, and I can imagine, like Joel Sartori, he had to wait till he got the expression he wanted or take many pictures. But he felt that when he got an expression that he could really show the details of, that the animal became anthropomorphic, which is kind of what we've been saying about all these animals, almost allegorical, almost like they were coming from a storybook. You could see these photographs in a children's book. And he, was inspired to go on. He's got a number of these trophies. He realized that these photographs resembled the original photographic portraits people took in the early 19th century. And his are different because they are color photography and very vivid, but the frames that he's using are the same kind of frames you'll see in those early 19th century portraits. So he's making a reference to portraits and then making it completely contemporary and his own. Anybody have anything else they want to ask or bring up about this photograph?
So Susan, are you saying that the animal, it's not cropped, the photograph? There's actually a drape?
There's actually a drape. He uses either white or black fabric.
Okay.
And so it looks, it's kind of like, I guess, the animal stuck its head through a piece of fabric. And maybe that is how he did it. But he he started just trying to take headshots, and then just tried this and liked the way it turned out, and
Yeah.
liked the fact that it referenced taxidermy. And also, apparently, I haven't seen, or I try not to look at a whole lot of taxidermy, but he says that a lot of taxidermy is also framed in an oval frame like this. So he thought he was making references back to original portraits and to taxidermy, and but clearly trying to take real animals and anthropomorphize them a little bit. Anybody see anything else or that they would like to mention here? As I said before, Evan Kafka really, his main focus is on advertising, commercial work. Again, if you go to his website, you will see loads of magazine covers. You'll see a lot of the work he's done, and he does take photographs, a lot of people too. He likes to take photographs of babies. And he also photographs animals full body. So this is, one kind of thing he does. But most of the photography he does now are for commercial reasons. He's, an advertising, some product or magazine or something like that. And more recently, he decided to, in a similar way, when he does the photographs, they're all kind of a black or white background like this, whether they're animals or people. And he decided to try using video for some of the commercial work he was doing. And several of those are on his website. And he let me know that these videos on his website are not pieces that he did on commission as a job. They're just him doing exercises in video to see how he can make that work. So we're going to take a moment to look at a very short video that he did and see how he can do the same kind of thing in movement that he can do in still photography.
Can you see that screen? Did it change?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So that's an example of some of the newer work that he's using in his work for advertising. And that is mainly what he does now. But these trophies are portraits. And like I said, you can see a lot of his work. He did so many covers for health magazines. So there's a lot of people and news magazines, very interesting, and some famous people too. So anybody have any other questions about these works or the video or anything else we've been talking about today?
Just in the video, again, there was focus on the faces and heads of the animals. The whole thing was all focus on the face. So,
right. And
the lighting is so beautiful. It just highlights their fur and their eyes and gives them this, as you were saying, Susan, this anthropomorphic quality, these qualities that I think that we as human beings can really identify with. And how he gets those whitest whites and blackest blacks as the background is beyond me. He's very
Well,
is a
he
master at that.
attributes it. Yeah, I mentioned that he originally was a technician, like a computer tech, and he attributes the way he's able to use lighting and other electronics to his first degree in and knowing how to do that. He feels that it's the lighting that allows him to get this. After he did go to to school for photography, but he went originally from photographing editorially to photographing commercially. I think it's an interesting transition that he's made.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you,
Okay.
Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
This was a really good
job.
introduction to a few works in the exhibition, A Telling Instinct, John James Audubon and Contemporary Art. Although I think about a month ago, we also looked at the artwork that you also saw in that photo with the Bo Bartlett, the Anne Lemansky here. We looked at this one already a few weeks ago. So we've now seen 4 works from the exhibition. And next week, our touring docents Hank Bovey and Sheila Langdon are going to do a part 2 on A Telling Instinct. And their Slow Art Friday is called Beyond Audubon. And they're going to look at works in 3 different media, a large-scale drawing, a multimedia painting, and another print. So please join us next week. If you haven't signed up already, you can go onto our website, ashevilleart.org, click on the calendar, and look for Beyond Audubon to get signed up. Thank you again, Susan. Thanks to all of you for a really great conversation. I love Slow Art Fridays because you never really get the chance, I think, to slow down and really look at something and talk about it. And so every time I'm with you guys on Slow Art Friday, I learn something new about works in our collection or our special exhibition.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So take care, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.